When you look at the natural world, you see this beautiful, complex tapestry of life, right? But underneath all that beauty, there is this constant, powerful force that's shaping every single interaction. And, it's not always some big, dramatic battle, but it's always there. So today, let's dive into that force, competition. It's a really good question, isn't it? I mean, if every single organism is out for itself, fighting for food, water, space, you'd pretty much expect total chaos, just a constant free-for-all. But that's not really what we see. So how does nature actually manage this universal struggle? Well, to understand the conflict, we first have to get a handle on the stage where all this drama unfolds. And in the world of ecology, that stage has a name. It's called the community. Now, a community isn't just a random bunch of creatures hanging out in the same place. It's everything. From the tallest trees to the tiniest bacteria living in the soil, all of them living together, and this is the crucial part, interacting. This super intricate web of relationships is exactly where our story begins. And this is a really key point. These communities are buzzing with activity. They're not static pictures. They are always in motion. Species come and go, the weather changes, and it's the interactions between all these organisms that are driving that constant dynamic change. It's a living, breathing system. Okay, so we've set the stage. Now let's introduce the central conflict. At its heart, it's a pretty simple problem that every single organism has to deal with. There's only so much to go around, and everybody needs a piece. This is the absolute foundation of competition. You probably noticed that minus symbol on the slide. That's there for a really important reason. Competition is what we call a lose-lose interaction. Think about it. Even the winner has to burn precious energy and time fighting. That's energy that could have been used for growing or making babies. So, in the end, both sides really do pay a price. So this conflict plays out in a couple of different ways. First, you've got intraspecific competition. That's a rivalry happening within the same species, like two moose locking antlers to fight for a mate. But for this explainer, we're going to focus on interspecific competition, which is the rivalry between different species. Think lions and hyenas fighting over the same carcass. This is where things get really, really interesting in shaping the whole community. So what happens when that conflict between two different species gets pushed to its absolute limit? I mean, what happens when two species want the exact same thing in the exact same place at the exact same time? Well, you get an ultimate showdown. Now, to really get this showdown, you have to understand the concept of a niche. A niche isn't just where an animal lives, it's its entire profession. It's the sum total of its role in the ecosystem. What it eats, what eats it, how it behaves, it's its complete and total job description. Let's just run with that metaphor for a second. What happens in any field when two different people, or in our case, two different species, are competing for the exact same job with the exact same resume? There's just not enough room for both of them. And that brings us to a crucial point. There can only be one. This is called the competitive exclusion principle, and it's a fundamental rule of how communities work. If two species have identical niches, identical jobs, one will always be just a tiny bit better at it. And over time, that tiny edge is enough for it to outcompete the other one and eventually push it out of the community completely. Here's a classic real-world example. On coastal rocks, you have different species of barnacles all competing for a spot to live. One species happens to be a stronger competitor, and it can literally shove the other one right off the best real estate. In a direct head-to-head for the same spot, the winner takes it all. But hang on, if this winner-take-all thing was the only rule, ecosystems would be a lot less interesting, a lot less diverse. So how do we get those rich, complex communities we see everywhere? Well, it turns out nature has evolved some incredibly clever ways to avoid all-out war. It's found ways to call a truce. The first strategy is something called resource partitioning. And really, this is just a fancy way of saying they agree to share. So instead of fighting over the entire pie, different species just divide it up, and each one takes a different slice. It's a simple but totally brilliant way to keep the peace. And check out this amazing example. Different species of little birds called warblers can all live in the exact same spruce tree. How? Because they've partitioned it. One species hunts for insects at the very top, another one sticks to the middle branches, and a third works the lower section near the trunk. It's the same tree, but they're all eating at different restaurants, which means they're not directly fighting over their next meal. Okay, now for the second strategy, which is even more incredible because it plays out over huge evolutionary timescales. It's called character displacement. This is where the pressure of competition actually causes species to physically change, to evolve away from each other, to reduce how much they have to fight.
A classic example of this is with Darwin's finches. Imagine two species competing for the exact same seeds. Over time, natural selection might favor birds in one species that have slightly bigger beaks, perfect for cracking tough seeds. At the same time, in the other species, birds with smaller beaks that are better for tiny, soft seeds do better. Over many, many generations, they literally evolve out of each other's way.
So, we've seen the stage, the conflict, the big showdown, and the truth. But so what? Why does any of this matter? What's the big picture takeaway from all of this ecological drama? Here's the bottom line. Competition isn't just about conflict. It is one of the most powerful creative forces in all of nature. It acts like a filter, sure, deciding who gets to stay and who has to go. But it's so much more than that. This constant pressure to avoid a fight is what drives evolution, creating new skills and new body types, and ultimately, it's what sculpts the incredible biodiversity we see all around us. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. We've just seen how this constant push and pull shapes entire ecosystems, forcing species to find their own unique place, their own niche. So take a look at our world. How might this very same fundamental force be shaping our human communities, our economies, and maybe even our own personal search for a place in the world?